Good morning, students. We are discussing chapter mineral nutrition, right? In this mineral nutrition chapter, go for the next topic, mechanism of absorption of elements. What? Mechanism of absorption. Mechanism of absorption of elements. Mechanism of absorption of what's our elements. Now listen here. We are discussing mechanism of what? Absorption of elements. Sir, the studies, most of the studies are concerned to this mechanism of absorption of elements. They are carried out on isolated cells, isolated tissues, isolated organs. Okay. Most of the studies on mechanism of absorption of elements, okay, right, by plants is carried out on isolated cells, isolated tissues and isolated organs. Okay, sir, what this studies reveals, right, what this studies reveals, what this studies shows, this studies shows that process of absorption involves two phases. Process of absorption, there is nothing but mechanism of absorption of elements, involves how many phases? Two phases. Involves how many phases? Two phases. Involves two phases. Okay, right? Now see the diagram once. See this diagram once. Sir, for example, right, this is a cell, sir. What is this one, sir? This is a cell. In cell, I am taking a plant cell. Okay, which cell, sir? Plant cell. Which cell, sir? Plant cell. Plant cell. Okay, right, sir, this is a plant cell. Okay, in this plant cell, this is a cell wall. What is this one, sir? Cell wall. Okay, sir, this is plasma membrane. What is this one, sir? Plasma membrane. Plasma membrane. Sir, in between this cell wall and plasma membrane, you can see a space. This space is called as a free space. What is this space called as a free space? It is also called as outer space. What it is called as, sir? Outer space. Outer space. Sir, it is also called as apoplast. What it is called as, sir? Apoplast. I am speaking about the space that is present between the cell wall and plasma membrane. This space which is present between the cell wall and plasma membrane is called as a free space or outer space or apoplast. Is it okay? Right. Now this space which is present inside the cell, inside the cell, this is called as inner space. What is this space called as a inner space? This inner space is also called as a symplast. What it is called as, sir? Symplast. It is also called as what, sir? Symplast. Okay, right. Now you tell me, sir, if you see the mechanism of absorption of elements, it involves how many phases? Two phases. Okay, go for the first phase. What, sir? First phase. Go for the first phase. Sir, what happens in this first phase? Uptake of ions. Uptake of what? Ions into free space or outer space. Okay, it means into this outer space what are entered? Ions are entered. Okay, right, therefore entry of what, sir? Ions into which space, sir? Into the free space or outer space. What it is called as? Apoplast. Okay, sir, this entry of ions into the free space, it takes place rapidly, takes place fastly, and it is a passive process. Passive process does not require ATP energy, Therefore, in the mechanism of absorption of elements, in the first phase, ions enters into outer space, free space, that is apoplast. How? Rapidly, fastly, without utilizing ATP energy, passive process. Sir, once ions enters into this free space, now this ions enters into the inner space in the second phase. Therefore, what happens in the second phase? Uptake of ions into the inner space. Uptake of ions into the inner space. What is this inner space called as, sir? Symplast. Sir, it is a slow process. It is a slow process. In first phase, ions entered into the apoplast, outer space. In second phase, ions entered into the inner space, that is a symplast. Right? This entry is rapidly taken place. This entry of ions into the outer space takes place rapidly, that is fastly. Whereas entry of ions into the inner space or symplast takes place slowly. Okay. Now listen this statement. Sir, passive movement of ions. Passive movement of ions means without utilizing ATP energy. Okay. Into what, sir? Apoplast. Into what? Apoplast. Okay. Along the concentration gradient. Sir, what is the meaning of along the concentration gradient? Along the concentration gradient means from higher concentration region to lower concentration region. What is the meaning of along the concentration gradient? Along the concentration gradient, name itself indicates gradient means difference. Difference in what? Here, concentration gradient. Difference in concentration gradient. Here, movement of ions is from higher concentration region to lower concentration region. Higher concentration region to lower concentration region. So, we are calling along the concentration gradient. Sir, this takes place through what, sir? Ion channels. Takes place through what, sir? Ion channels. In first year we read one statement. Sir, this plasma membrane contains different types of proteins. Some of these proteins acts as ion channels and some of the proteins acts as carrier proteins. Yes or no? Some acts as ion channels. Channel, passage. It means the protein is acting like a passage and allowing the ions to pass through it. What is acting like a channel, sir? Right, proteins are acting like channels. They are called as ion channels. Okay, right? Therefore, see this statement once. Sir, passive movement of ions, passive without utilizing ATP energy into the apoplast. Okay, sir, if ions enters into the apoplast passively, okay, how, sir? Passively along the concentration gradient, that is from higher concentration region to lower concentration region, then it requires what, sir? Ion channels. It means the proteins right, which acts like channels, passages for ion channels. Now go for the next statement. Sir, entry of ions, right, to symplast. Entry of ions into what, sir? Symplast. Against the concentration gradient. See this statement carefully. What enters? Ions. Into what? Symplast. How? Against the concentration gradient. Concentration gradient means difference in concentration. Against the concentration gradient means from lower concentration region to higher concentration region. Should be careful. Along the concentration gradient, higher concentration region to lower concentration region. Against the concentration gradient, lower concentration region to higher concentration region. Therefore, if ions enters into the symplast, against the concentration gradient, then metabolic energy, ATP energy is required. As metabolic energy is required, it becomes which process? Active process. When the process is becoming active, if movement is against the concentration gradient, that is from lower concentration to region to higher concentration region, then it is becoming, right, active process. ATP energy required, ATP energy, metabolic energy. Now see this statement once. Exit of ions. exit of ions from symplast. What is the first case? Entry of ions into the symplast against the concentration gradient, active process, requires metabolic energy. What is the second condition here? Exit of ions, coming out of what? Exit of ions from where? Symplast. Now the ions are coming out of symplast. How? Against the concentration gradient. This is also right active process as it requires metabolic energy. Therefore, movement if against the concentration gradient, movement if against the concentration gradient requires ATP energy. ATP energy, nothing but metabolic energy. If ATP energy is required, it becomes which process, sir? Active process. Becomes which process? Active process. Now listen this statement. Movement of ions, whether out to in or into out. Movement of ions, if ion moves, movement of ions is called as flux. What, sir? Movement of ions. Movement of ions is called as what, sir? Flux. Movement of ions is called as what, sir? Flux. Sir, if ion enters into the cell, ions enters right into the cell, then it is called as a influx. What it is called as a influx. If ions comes out of the cell, then it is called as a flux. What it is called as a flux. Is this statement okay? Movement of ions, whether from out to in or into out, movement of ions is called as flux. If ions enters into the cell, ions entered into the cell, influx. Ions came out of the cell, what it is called as a flux. What it is called as a flux. Okay, right? Go for the next topic. Soil as reservoir of essential elements. Soil as reservoir of essential elements. Sir, essential elements required for growth and development of the plant. Yes or no? What in number? 17. In this 17 essential elements, right, except carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, remaining 14 essential elements are absorbed by the plant from the soil. It means the soil is acting as a reservoir for essential elements. Yes or no? Essential elements required for growth and development of the plant. What in number? 17. 17 essential elements are present. In this 17 essential elements, plant is absorbing, right, 14 essential elements, 14 essential elements from the soil. It means the soil is acting as a reservoir of essential elements. Sir, from where this soil got these essential elements, sir? From where this soil got the essential elements? Sir, in the earth, number of rocks are present. Some rocks are rich in minerals. Rocks which are rich in minerals. What, sir? Minerals. Such rocks are called as ores. What are such rocks called as, sir? Ores. When this ores undergoes a weathering process, which process, sir? Weathering process. Sir, what is this weathering process, sir? This ore breaks and forms soil. Okay, that is called as what, sir? Weathering process. When this weathering process takes place, the rock is going to break. When this rock breaks, what are released? Minerals are released into the soil. What are released, sir? Minerals are released into the soil. Sir, these minerals either exist, okay, these minerals exist as dissolved ions and inorganic salts. Okay, right? Therefore, what are released, sir? Minerals. Okay, right? These minerals, they exist as what? They exist as dissolved ions. It means they dissolves in the water present in the soil, as well as in the form of what, sir? Inorganic salts. In the form of what, sir? Inorganic salts. Is this statement clear? Now see this statement. Majority of nutrients that are essential for growth and development of the plant, just now I told, majority of the nutrients out of 17, 14, which are essential for growth and development of the plant, they becomes available to root of the plant due to which process? Weathering process. Yes or no? Except carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, remaining 14 absorbed from the soil only, no? Right. Therefore, majority of nutrients that are essential for growth and development of the plant, they becomes available to roots by which process, sir? Weathering process. When this weathering takes place, right, when this weathering takes place, right, the soil becomes rich. Soil becomes rich in what, sir? Minerals. That minerals are present either in form of dissolved ions or in the form of inorganic salts. Okay, right, sir, since this minerals, they are derived from rock, yes or no? These minerals, they are derived from where, sir? Rock, and they are having a role in plant nutrition, right? So it is called as what, sir? Mineral nutrition. Sir, these minerals, they are derived from rock. Yes or no? And these minerals, after entering into the plant, they are having a role, structural role and functional role in plants. Yes or no? Right. That's why, right, we are calling this as what, sir? Mineral nutrition. Since they are derived from rock minerals, their role in plant nutrition is called as mineral nutrition. Sir, soil, it is not only providing minerals to the plant. Soil, it not only provides minerals to the plant, it also holds water that is required for the plants. It is providing air to the roots. It is giving shelter to the nitrogen fixing bacteria and other microorganisms. Okay, sir, this soil acts as a matrix and stabilizes the plants. Therefore, soil not only providing minerals to the plant, holds water that is required for the plant, capillary water, which is absorbed by the plant roots. Therefore, holds water. Okay, provides air to the roots. Sir, root of a plant won't come for respiring. Does the root of a plant takes oxygen directly from the atmosphere? No. Right? It is taking the oxygen from the soil. It means soil provides oxygen for the roots. Okay. Sir, soil acts as a matrix, stabilizes the plant. Stabilizing the plant. Sir, even this soil provides shelter to nitrogen fixing bacteria and other microorganisms. Okay, right? Now listen to the statement. Sir, who is providing minerals to the plants, sir? Soil. If soil becomes deficient in minerals, what happens? Automatically, availability of minerals to the plant decreases. So crop production decreases. So what a farmer has to do? Has to supply this deficient minerals in the form of fertilizers. In the form of what? Fertilizers. Yes or no? Right. Therefore, if soil becomes deficient. If soil becomes deficient in what, sir? Minerals. Soil becomes deficient in minerals, then what happens? Crop production decreases. Crop yield decreases. So what a farmer has to do? He has to supply these deficient minerals in the form of fertilizers. In the form of what, sir? Fertilizers. Therefore, deficient minerals are supplied to plants in the form of fertilizers. Sir, these fertilizers, it includes macro elements or micro elements, sir? It includes macro elements as well as micro elements. Fertilizers, it includes both macro elements as well as micro elements. Macro elements such as NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, etc. Micro elements such as manganese, iron, copper, zinc, etc. Okay, therefore fertilizers includes both macro elements as well as micro elements. Macro elements such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, etc. Micro elements such as manganese, iron, copper, zinc, etc. Therefore fertilizers they includes what's macro and micro elements. Sir, why a farmer has to supply the fertilizer, sir? Because if soil is deficient in minerals, the production of the plant decreases, crop production decreases. Right? To increase the crop production, sufficient minerals should be supplied to the plant. But soil is deficient in minerals. So farmer is artificially supplying that deficient minerals in the form of fertilizers, which includes both macro and micro essential elements. Okay, right? Thank you.